Hey, this is James from All Hail Internal Combustion. What do you do when you got 1,000 things to do? You add one more to the list. 1,001. This is a John Deere STX38 that we picked up as a parts mower. We took some parts off of it, as you can see. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and get it running to make this thing like a yard buggy to pull trailers around and other stuff like that. And what I did yesterday is I wanted to make sure that the engine actually cranked over, but this thing has a few safety features on it that needed to be bypassed before I could even turn the key to try and start this thing. Now I did go ahead and jump the starter solenoid with a battery hooked on it. And as you can see in the John Deere, the starter solenoid is down there. You jump across your big two red terminals, and the engine did crank over. So then I tried to crank it over with the key, and of course nothing happened. This wire right here is the seat safety switch that has a pressure sensor in the switch that tells when your butt is in the seat, so that's bypass number one. So I went ahead and jumped that wire just to see if my key worked. Of course it didn't, because mowers have 10,000 safety switches on them. This one right here is the brake safety switch, which basically means you need to, in order to start this thing, you need to have your brake pedal depressed. You need to have your lock for your brake over. And then it will go ahead and allow your starter solenoid to engage. Now the two purple wires on here actually go to the starter solenoid. They're the trigger wire to engage the solenoid. So they run all the way from back of the solenoid up to here and then back to the solenoid again. So what I did is I jumped these two with white wire. Now these other wires coming in here, the three white ones, they are also a part of that brake switch, so it's like a double action switch. I went ahead and I jumped those with this black wire. Then when I went and tried my key with a screwdriver, the engine spun over. So then I went ahead and I checked the oil on it. Oil is dirty and needs to be changed, and I will absolutely do that. But when I went to pull the spark plug on it, this thing was just caked with old grease and dirt and leaves and everything else. So what I'm going to do before I even try to pull that spark plug out of there, I'm going to hose this down with Purple Power, push it outside, hit the whole thing with a pressure washer so I got something nice and clean. I think I'm not getting spark, because I did try to fire this thing with a little shot of fuel down the carburetor, and I wasn't getting anything. So it's either the spark plug is completely crapped out, it's a possibility my coil could be bad. And then when I went to turn the gas on the other side, this fuel line right here has got about 31 billion holes in it. So I'm going to go ahead and replace all the fuel line on this side. I've got the carburetor off, and there's another pile of stuff that was all on top of this motor. So I am going to block off the intake port. I've already taken the studs out so I could clean the gasket material better. But I'm going to hose this thing down with Purple Power, block that port off so I don't get any water in the engine, and put a cap over this. This goes into the valve cover. And I'm going to get this thing cleaned up and see what it looks like after that. Alright, so we're back on the John Deere. As you can see, I got it power washed off and it's a lot cleaner. First thing I want to do for it is I want to check for spark. So I've got my little homemade spark tester here. And I'm going to go ahead and crank the key and see if we get anything. Well, crank the screwdriver, I should be saying. Alright, so we got no spark. Now, before we automatically assume that the coil's bad, we want to come up here to the coil itself and take a look at it, because what might be happening is these coils, when you ground them out, they stop producing spark. So this wire is going to go back up to our ignition switch. What we want to do is we want to pull this off of here so that we're not accidentally getting a ground and causing us not to get spark. Now we'll go ahead and we'll do the spark test again. Well, as you can see now, we just got spark. So that means I've got a problem with that key switch that's up in the controls next to the seat. So I'm going to have to look into that. But what I'm going to do before I put this thing back together, I know we're getting spark. I'm still going to pull the spark plug to make sure that it's still in a usable condition. I'm also going to go ahead and pull this coil off of here and clean it up. And then put it back on the engine. Then once I get to that point, I'll bring it back. We'll take a look at the spark plug together. Then I'm going to go ahead and shoot some gas down the side. I have the carburetor off of it because I'm pretty sure it needs to be rebuilt. So we'll come back after that and see if we can get this thing to pop off real quick. Now you'll see what I did here. I just cleaned up these two pedestals that hold my ignition coil up. And I also took and cleaned where the bolts go on the coil itself. And on this coil, a lot of them are marked, but this goes with the direction of the motor. And we know the motor on this, if we're standing in the front, spins clockwise. So that's going to go that way. So now that I got everything cleaned up, I'm going to go ahead and bolt it back on. And then we will set the gap, because you do have to have a gap. You don't want this thing running right up against the magnets, and you also don't want it 50 million miles away, because it won't work. Okay, before we get to setting our coil gap against our flywheel magnets, one thing I did want to mention is I have seen flywheel magnets go bad, and I think it's usually when people shut the mower off and your magnets are perfectly aligned with your coil. They do tend to lose a little bit of their oomph. But the easy way to check them, see, those magnets are still good. Now to set our gap, there's specific gaps that manufacturers are recommending or whatever. We used to always set them with a matchbook, but like, who uses matches anymore? So what I did was I just took a piece of masking tape, folded it over on itself 5 times. That seems to always get me in the ballpark that I need to get to. And what I did was I put it in between. My coil drew itself in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and lock down this side. Make sure my other side isn't too far in, because I do need to adjust that one as well. Now I'll go ahead and pull my masking tape out. Open that side of the coil up a little bit. Slip it in. Lock that bolt down. And don't get super aggressive with these bolts. They will strip, because they're only going into aluminum. Then we'll come back on this side, double check. See, I tightened up a little bit. So we'll loosen this one up to get our gap back. As you can see, sometimes it's a pain in the butt. But once we get in there, Alright, so that side wants to be complete, utter butthead. There we go. So we'll lock down this side. Make sure and leave ourselves a little bit extra gap for when we double check the other side. Comes out nice and easy. That side is still good. And then we're just going to lock everything down. And that is our gap. Now, of course, once you start cranking on the motor, you're going to want to double check this periodically. But as you can see, there is very little gap there. But that is going to be enough to let this thing get spark. And like I said, I'm going to have to figure out what's going on because my key is sticking up at the control panel. So I might just end up taking this thing and wiring a momentary toggle for start and then a switch to ground this coil out to shut it off. But I'm going to get everything set up and we're going to check the spark plug next. Alright, so this is the spark plug out of the engine. It's not the happiest looking spark plug in the entire universe, but I think it's going to be fine. And this thing hasn't run in probably, I'd say 2 to 3 years. So I kind of expect the spark plug to look a little funky. I'm going to take this and hit it on the wire brush and clean it up and then put some anti-seize on these threads and go ahead and pop this thing back into the engine. And we'll see if this thing will pop over for us. Alright, so hit it in the wire wheel, cleaned it up, sprayed it down with a little carb cleaner afterwards, just get some of the muck out of it, and put a little bit of anti-seize on it because it is going in an aluminum head. Put this on and grab a squirt bottle and see what happens. Alright, so I'm going to give this thing a little shot of fuel. That was a lot of fuel, but it's okay. And we'll see if this thing cranks up. That was a lot of fuel. Let me wipe some of that up. How about that? Okay, this time I'm going to try with some carbon choke cleaner because obviously I spilled way too much gas last time. But I hope you enjoyed the pyrotechnics that I put on every once in a while. Boy, I just love burning shit up today, don't I? Alright, I sprayed a little carbon choke into the intake port. Wipe up the extra fuel so I don't burn the mower to the ground. And will it light? And out of carbon choke. But it did run. Hope y'all like the fireworks. Now I need to rebuild the carburetor on this thing, but that'll be another video because I'm pretty sure it's nasty and got all kinds of crap floating around in it. But that's it so far. We got a John Deere STX38 that's going to be my yard buggy. And it does run. Still needs a little bit of work, but come back and show you that after I get this thing all put back together. So we'll see you next time. Like and subscribe. Maybe we'll set more stuff on fire. See ya.